You ever come home after weeks away and find your entire life, every single thing you built, every memory, every promise crushed under a wrecking ball you didn't even see coming? Yeah, that happened to me. The HOA was tearing down my lakefront home for fees. I didn't owe fees for an association I was never even part of, and that morning, standing in the dirt, watching a machine chew up the walls I'd built with my own hands, it's like my whole world split in two, and let me tell you, nothing ever feels the same after that. 6 weeks earlier, I'd locked my door and left to visit my daughter and grandkids, not a worry in my head except hoping the coffee would still be good when I got back. I was just another old fire chief coming home to his porch by the lake, expecting the air to smell like pine and the only thing stirring to be a couple of deer by the water. Instead, that morning as I turned my RV onto the gravel, I got hit with the stench of diesel and destruction dust hanging heavy. Nothing like home should ever smell. My house, the place my wife and I built board by board, was just rubble. The porch where we'd watch the sun come up splintered to nothing. The living room wall leaning like a tombstone, the kitchen gaping open to the lake. And there, half buried in drywall and broken glass, was my late wife's piano, shattered keys spilled out across the mud, her music gone for good. I don't remember running forward, just a man in an orange vest blocking me, flat voice saying, "Sir, you can't be here. This is an active demolition site." I choked out, "This is my home," but he just pointed at some paper and said I was 6 months behind on HOA dues. HOA dues, I never joined their damn HOA. My land was always separate, deeded and recorded, 12 acres carved out before they ever built Heron Creek Estates. I told him that, voice getting sharp, but he just smirked and said, "You are now right," as the excavator swung and the last of my kitchen wall came crashing down. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't even incompetence. Somebody wanted me erased, and they were doing it one forged document at a time. I went to the mailbox, hands shaking, and pulled out stacks of letters, bills, flyers, and 2 thick envelopes stamped with the HOA header. One was a certified letter return receipt still attached, claiming I owed nearly $3,000. The other was a copy of HOA meeting minutes, a line circled in red motion, passed to annex the Whitaker property retroactive to keep the lakefront aesthetic. I stood in the driveway, hands shaking, thinking of all those years ago when I'd watched surveyors hammer iron stakes into the dirt, staking out my 12 acres, my separate deed. I'd seen the subdivision rise up cul-de-sacs named for trees they never planted, and I'd smiled knowing my land was untouchable. Turns out paper only protects you until someone decides to lie with a bolder pin. Now my home was gone, my wife's memory scattered in the dirt. But you know what? Something else took root in me right then. A cold, hard piece of resolve. If they thought paperwork could erase me, they were about to learn they'd picked the wrong man. So I dug through the wreckage for every scrap of evidence I could find. The membership agreement they waved at me was a joke. My signature there, but sloppy, not even close to mine. And the timestamp signed at 2:27 a.m. when I was in Denver with my daughter and grandkids' pictures to prove it, receipts, everything. Worse, the notary seal was crooked, and the notary wasn't anyone I knew. That was my thread, and I started to pull. But I wasn't alone. It didn't take long for neighbors to start talking. A white-haired man trimming hedges told me they'd fined him $2,000 for a fence that was 6 inches over the line, nearly wiped out his savings. Down the street, an elderly widow said they charged her $1,000 to repaint her shutters, the right shade of beige, and beige is beige, but not to them. Young families lost play sets. Veterans got threatened with foreclosure for parking RVs. Over and over, bully threatened collect. Everyone paid up or backed down until now. That's when I first heard Linda Roswell's name. Neighbors said she ran the board, ran everything. If you crossed Linda, you lost your home. She'd been watching my property for years. If she couldn't buy it, she'd steal it with a vote and a pin. I called my old friend Stitch Mallory, a grizzled engineer who used to work fire scenes with me. He circled the ruins, poked at the beams, launched a drone to map the site, looked me dead in the eye and said, "This wasn't a collapse, Jack. This was an execution." He handed me drone photos. No rot, no cracks. Foundation solid. Exhibit A. He told me to dig up the inspection report, and I did. There it was, in the county files, a report condemning my house, signed by Bill Johnson. But I knew Bill. I called him, and he swore he hadn't inspected my property in 20 years. Said the signature wasn't his, the spelling was even wrong. Damn right I'll testify, he told me. That was all I needed. I went over the demolition permit, found the digital file, and dug into the metadata. Right there in black and white, Linda R., editing at 2:27 a.m., pasting my old signature into the permit. She hadn't even bothered to erase her own name. I saved the proof on my laptop in the cloud on a thumb drive everywhere I could. Next stop was Sheriff Miller, old friend, now more gray than I remembered but still steady. I dropped every piece of evidence on his desk papers, photos, metadata, neighbor statements. He looked at it all, leaned in, and said, "Jack, this isn't just one bad permit. This is a pattern." He handed me a folder, a list of neighbors who'd complained over the years but got bullied into silence. Not this time. I called each one Samuel Green, Evelyn Carter, the Millers, and one by one they told me their stories. By sundown, I had an army. We were done being whispers. We were thunder. The next HOA meeting, the whole town was there. Linda sat in the center, lipstick perfect, pearls gleaming, tapping her gavel. She tried to shut me down, said I was out of order. I dropped the folder on the table, papers and photos sliding across the wood, and said, "Go ahead, Linda. Tell them how you forged my signature. Tell them why your name's on the permit." The room erupted, neighbors standing up, voices rising, each telling how Linda bled them dry. Sheriff Miller stepped in, badge shining. Linda saw the writing on the wall, but she didn't quit. Next day, Miller called me in. The state attorney had seen enough warrants for fraud, forgery, destruction of private property. We drove to Linda's house, 2 squad cars and a crowd. Miller read the charges. Deputies cuffed her right there in her manicured yard. Neighbors called out Evelyn about the shutters, Samuel about the fence, the Millers about the ramp. For the first time, Linda was just another face in the crowd. No power, no voice, nothing left but the truth. Court was quick. Every document, every photo, every voice proof piled up until the jury saw through every lie. Linda got 5 years, HOA dissolved, and the insurance company wrote a check for the full replacement of my home plus damages. I rebuilt not for revenge, but for proof that truth outlasts lies. Neighbors pitched in, we built ramps, fixed roads, planted real trees where fake ones used to stand. The community came back together stronger than before. On the first night in my new house, I set the old hinge from my wife's piano on the mantel, a reminder of what can't be taken by force or forgery. The lake was quiet again, and for the first time in years, I felt at peace. Not because Linda was gone, but because we stood together. Because justice, real justice, isn't about rules or signatures or dues. It's about neighbors who refuse to let bullies win. So what do you think? Did I do the right thing? Was it justice or just payback? If you've ever tangled with an HOA or had to fight for what was yours, let me know in the comments. Your voice matters here, and maybe, just maybe, we can keep the fire burning long enough that nobody like Linda Roswell ever rules another street again.